Hi, my name is Joe Bowman. I'm the publications manager and part of the programming team here at Frameline, and we are super excited to bring you the second annual Frameline Fangs. Right now we are going to be presenting a Q&A with one of our favorite films playing in Frameline Fangs, The Carnivores. So please welcome director Caleb Michael Johnson. Are you in your backyard in Austin?
I'm actually in Adam's backyard, so he's about 12 feet that way. Yeah, inside. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome Adam J. Minnick, who is the cinematographer and producer of the film.
Thank you for having us.
And the lead actor Tallie Medel. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Sorry, mute button, unmute button.
That's okay. Where are you currently?
Yeah. I'm in Queens, New York.
Fabulous. Okay, so I guess I wanted to start off with just asking, well, first of all, I just wanted to talk about just how much I really adored the film. I found it to be a really exciting sort of blend of all of these different genres that sort of comes together in its own and becomes something that's totally unique and takes this, you know, these absurd ideas, maybe not ideas, but these absurd sequences, and find something that's actually rather poignant and human within. And that's sort of my favorite kinds of films. So I'm really happy to be presenting The Carnivores, streaming for 2 days across the US. So the first question I wanted to ask was to all of you, I just wanted to get an idea of, I guess, influence, like what the genesis of The Carnivores. Caleb, why don't you start?
It's a bunch of different parts that came together kind of like at the same time. Part of them were from my own life, insofar as my wife is and has always been a very avid and dedicated sleepwalker. And that's something that had been kind of like intruding upon my life and my nights anyway. And I wanted to work with that in some way. And around the same time, Adam and I, who had been friends for several years but had never worked together, started talking about working together and what we could do. And it had been, my previous film was with Tallie, and that had been 2 or 3 years hence by that point, since it had been released or out. And those three elements together, we were just like, let's see what we can do. And we literally just started with those pieces and kind of built it from there. And it took a long time to build, but it was from those organic pieces that it started.
Adam,
yeah, sure. Caleb and I used to get fish a lot. Am I still on?
Yeah, I think you are. I think you're being showcased at the moment.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we used to go to this like fish place because neither of our partners really liked fish, and we were fish buddies. So we eat fish, and he started bringing up the idea of this script he was writing, and kind of just naturally became this thing where it's like, man, we live in the same town where neither of us are doing anything at this moment. Let's talk about making something together. We've been fans of each other's work for a while, and it was I saw Joy Kevin, which stars Tallie, the same year that a film that I had out called Buzzard. Caleb and I met at a film festival, and just the best way to meet people. And eventually we started working together and took our friendship to the cinematic level.
Tallie, I'm curious, sort of, how when you were brought on to sort of like this project, and sort of, where your influence for the performance, the character, because I know there was a handful of improvisation that went on during the film that we can talk about a little later, but just curious, yeah, sort of where you came from with The Carnivores.
It feels like it was so long ago at this point. I'm having trouble pinpointing. I think one of the biggest inceptions for the film was when we were initially casting, because I mean it was so long ago. Filming the movie began maybe like a year or at least after we had initially started talking about the film, and then it took 2 different years to finish the movie. So we had an actor in mind, and then I think another actor in mind, and then when they became unavailable, I asked if gender could be opened up just so that we had a wider talent pool. And so we opened it up to the Fangs, and we cast Lindsay. And so that changed the story pretty significantly, I think. Maybe actually not really. Everything stayed pretty much the same, but then it became a queer film. And that's like really the only thing that's coming to mind for me right now. I think because when you're working on something that's improvised, you really just sort of have to stay open to what's going on. And so I feel like working with Caleb or with people like Nathan Silver, you just sort of have to stay open and say, okay, let's try it. And just show up with a little energy, I guess. I hope it was okay with Caleb. But yeah, that's my answer, I think.
Caleb, you could respond to that?
Yeah, I'm curious about the I hope what that was okay part. What was that referring to?
I hope it was true that I showed up with a good attitude sometimes, most of the time. I hope.
No, it wasn't, but that's okay. No. It was a crazy movie and a crazy process. And Tallie's 100% right that it was it was like an epic production process. Like there was that year of developing it, and the first year was like hardcore improvised. The second year was like much closer to scripted, but still not fully scripted. And throughout all of that, I think the thing that stayed true, for sure, was the remaining flexible to adapt to, like, when something worked, being able to adjust and seize on that immediately. And that was, I think, awesome and part of what made the film be what it has become. I think it was also really hard on everybody because it's, it's hard to work that long without always knowing in the moment what's going to work and what's not. And initially that's exciting and fun and energizing, but it also starts to take a toll. And I also want to put a footnote here too, while we're talking about the inception of the film, that certainly part of it, for me in that early phase when we were, the idea was there and being developed, and Adam and I were talking, I knew that there was going to be certain things in there that I wanted to do that was going to be a little bit over the top, and that there weren't, and I mean like over the top in a kind of like out of the ordinary way, hard to pull off convincingly, and there just aren't a lot of people who I felt like could do that, but I knew that Tallie was one of them, one of the few, and in my experience, who could do exactly what I had in mind. So I think even before, I had my fingers crossed that she was going to come on board, but I was definitely, like, even before that, I was definitely writing to what I knew that she could do, and that was really helpful in the design process of the film for me.
Yeah, Tallie kind of jumped ahead and answered like two of the next questions I had. So my next question was about sort of the gender blind casting, because I know that another film that Lindsay had worked on, Duck Butter, I remember reading, was a film in which it was intended, or at least written, as a male and female protagonist. And sort of during the casting process, they opened it up and it became this film about two women. And so I was curious, so what that process was. Was it just you weren't finding somebody to play the Brett character, or you just wanted to sort of explore different avenues? Because it sounds like you had some ideas that you just wanted to, I guess, see how, roll the dice.
I'll start with that and just say that, initially there were, as in the same way that I was writing to Tallie, there was another male actor who I admire a lot and was writing specifically for things that I knew he was good at. In fact, we had part of like the long year build up to shooting was I came to New York and they were both there, and we got together in the room and tried some things out, and those were cool. And then, as Tallie mentioned, we couldn't just get together all at the same time. Like there were availability logistical issues, And then once we opened up the gender part, because the story-wise, it didn't really matter. But two things happened. Number one, just like as a dynamic, it changed the story for a better, like there was just like so many more interesting dimensions to it for me. And then of course the other element was that it meant that we could work with Lindsay, who Adam had just recently finished shooting with on another film, Actor Martinez. And that was, you know, that was really what solidified it to me and made it to be like, okay, we have to shoot now that we have like Tallie's available and Lindsay's available, who are both extraordinary and they've never worked together on screen before. Let's make this happen. Even though in some ways we weren't 100% ready, we just knew that we like those stars aligned and we wanted to jump on that and go with it.
Yeah,
it's worth.
Go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say it's worth mentioning too, like having like once the decision was made for Lindsay, we didn't know how that was going to work, and we had like Tallie and Lindsay come out to Austin in advance and like just to do some camera tests and like get them in the same room together and in kind of an intimate situation. The bedroom scene where they're playing the, you know, it's my turn, it's your turn to like request something that night. Caleb had that really well thought out, and getting Tallie and Lindsay in the same room together, it was like fireworks. Like we realized that week that was the right choice for sure. It was awesome.
And I'm curious to know, I've never heard, not to derail your questions, Joe, sorry, but I was curious, just like I've never heard, Tallie, I'm curious to hear what your experience was of that, if you recall whatever 17 years ago that was that we got together, what that was like for you.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I feel like maybe more so with race, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, like who gets to be the one telling a story if you're talking about like less and less a marginalized community, but like still, you know, a population that's like, they're usually movies about lesbians or somebody gets murdered or everybody, it's like, you know, it's typically then you would want the reins of the film to then be in a queer person's hands, a queer woman's hands, I guess. But I've come to that sort of more later, maybe like during the film. I would say though, with that said out loud, that Caleb is really, really good at maintaining constant communication throughout a process. And I think that there's ways in which that can be harmful, and then there's ways in which you have someone like Caleb who's directing, and so it just becomes like another project. But I just feel like that's something that I want to mention. I guess, yeah, I think that's the only thing, was like at a certain point realizing like, wait, is this something we can just sort of throw in? Or is this something that requires more of like, not an academic eye, but, you know, like a lived experience eye from the filmmaker's perspective. But I don't feel that way because the movie, I think, is beautiful. And I think Caleb did a great job. And we were pretty good about talking about that sort of thing throughout. Or I don't know. I mean, Caleb's just good at talking, you know? You are. I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, so actually, as I was watching the film, that was a question that came up because I feel like the film feels sort of unique from a queer perspective, and I kept thinking about, was it a gender-blind casting? You know, would this have worked with, you know, a man and a woman, two men, non-binary characters? But for some reason, every time, and I can't really put my finger on what it is, but it just feels like it makes the most sense to me as a film about two women who are in a relationship together. And when I was reading sort of about the making of this and how you sort of filmed it in two separate bulks with like a year in between, and there was some, you know, improvisation going on, I was curious sort of, you know, for Tallie, like how much input did you have in sort of like shaping Alice? You know, because I feel like that influence of, you know, sort of involving your actors who are also credited for part of the dialogue in the film, like shaping that, I feel like just made everything come together for me. in the right way. So I'm sort of curious, you know, how much involvement you had in sort of creating Alice from sort of like
A
a sketch.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, I wish I could remember more. But I mean, again, it's like in conversation with Caleb, you know, we were spending so much time with him in between shots and things, you know, because our location for a lot of stuff was at the house next door to his house, and so we would just be like going back and forth, and then the trip out to Austin before filming, conversations through email and phone. Again, this was roughly 25 years ago, so I don't remember exactly, but because it's improvised, I think, you know, so much of it is really just coming from circumstance. It was I feel like I just can't overstress how much of it was just experiential and happening while the camera was rolling. Do you remember anything, Caleb?
Yeah, I was going to jump on that and say that, like, I mean, so part of it was the conversations and exchanges in a literal way, and then, to be honest, I feel like as much or more of it was just me as a director seeing what was in front of me and responding to that. And I mean that both in terms of like in the moment on a scene by scene level, and I also mean like in a massive way in that year in between, like reshaping the first thing that we shot into the second thing. And specifically, so for instance, like with that scene that Adam mentioned, like the very first thing we ever did, you came to Austin, Lindsay and Tallie were in the room for the first time doing this scene that like I had very, very clear in my head from a dramatic perspective, and also how it should go. And because I knew Tallie and had worked with her, I thought exactly, I thought I also knew what this scene was going to be. And they did this scene. And it wasn't anything like what I had it, like the same things were happening, but the way that they were performing it was so profoundly different than how I would have been able to say, okay, now do it this way. And Adam and I, after that, just like looked at each other and we're just like there is energy and a life here that is beyond anything that we could have planned or put our thumb on and said, okay, it's going to go this way. And I think in that way, the light, like their performance and the energy and intelligence that they were bringing to it as kind of like actual, you know, like making it a real relationship as opposed to a melodramatic one in any way. I think it informed it hugely.
Yeah, so one of the things that I had read was that you filmed basically about half of it and then just sort of saw what worked and shaped, you know, basically the rest of the film from that point. Is that, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but that's what it kind of sounded like from what I had read. So I'm curious as to what, you know, what new, I mean, like you said, you made it 25 years ago, so you may not remember, but what like new directions or what new ideas did you have after that first bulk of shooting?
Yeah, I think I would say two things to that specifically. The first is that, you know, it's funny, like when I first sent the outline and the idea to Tallie and asked if she would be involved, I remember like our first conversation, she was like this is like a comedy, right? Like a big like comedy, because the things that were happening were so like not silly, but like outrageous in a way. You know what I mean? Like we're not gonna, like the people in the, like the actors, like our first intention, it's not like the people in the movie would know that it's a comedy, but that like it was meant to be played more for laughs. And that was my intent. Like we were totally on the same page. And the first year that we went in, we were still kind of like, I think, had that dynamic to a certain degree. And I think that was one of the pieces that ended up feeling not right, in terms of like, that was one of the things that I didn't let go of soon enough, I think, when the new kind of like real tangible dynamic between Tallie and Lindsay was clear. And so, we still got some, like, there's still a ton of that first year in the film. And there are also, by the way, like, there were probably like 5 or 6 really great, hilarious scenes that aren't in the film because they didn't make sense. Like, we shot those the first year, but it was clear that, like, they were kind of from a different movie. You know, they felt forced. And so that year in between was really me kind of like saying, like accepting that, first of all, and then also realizing that, like, okay, now we are going to write to this. And I think that's why, like, the second year ended up being more informed because, you know, obviously we had a lot of time to kind of like react to the first shoot. And I think it was like, that was also why it was much more heavily scripted, is because we had the first year as practice. Like, we knew we knew the scenes, we knew the order of the scenes, we knew like whatever, and there was still flexibility within those. But like you could see the movie to the beginning and the end, and you knew it was going to work based on what we had already done. And that wasn't necessarily true the first year, just because we were just, you know, we were having fun with stuff, but like not all of that made sense.
And so, Caleb, you and Adam actually both shot the film, which one of the things that I love about the film is sort of the visual dynamic of it, particularly the night scenes in which, you know, it feels like this dark, like noir in a suburb, where all these characters just have these headlights that are basically like illuminating them. And then you have these interior scenes in like the vet's office or the supermarket that look like poppy and sort of pulpy. So I sort of like that divide. And so I was wondering, you know, what the process was of you both shooting the film. Did you shoot it at the same time? Was that division between, you know, year 1 and year 2? Was that? I'm just curious, sort of how you balance that relationship.
There were some scenes like we would like the bedroom scene where we would actually both be holding cameras on the opposite characters, Alice and Brett, Tallie and Lindsay, and then we'd kind of switch and we'd get so much more footage that way. But that was not it was mostly a 1-camera shoot. There were, like I said, several scenes where we did have 2 cameras, but yeah, I mean, we talked about things at pretty great extent. A lot of times, like, if one of us wasn't kind of feeling it or doing something like the other one liked, we would just kind of hand it off and grit our teeth a little bit and get into it over what we think is the best approach. But it worked out really well in the end. And like, honestly, like the second year, Caleb took the helm a lot more that second year because I was available for part of the shoot. I would come to set and like do some, like, maybe talk about some lighting or some equipment, like some slide or something like that, and work on figuring out what they were going to do later when I couldn't be there. But I mean, yeah, it was a really interesting collaborative process where we both I would say it was pretty close to 50-50 on what we shot. See if Caleb agrees with that, but yeah.
Yeah, entirely. And I mean, I think that, like, you know, there's, I mean, in my mind, like, it doesn't, like, I can't even, it's funny, like, we keep making jokes about how long ago that we shot it. And like, by and large, like Tallie's been doing other things, Adam's been doing other things. Like, this has been kind of my creative life for the past four like, I remember I've seen every frame like 1,000 times. So like, almost anything in the film, the making of the film, whatever, I can be like, this is how it happened then. And like, I have, PTSD to a certain extent on the amount of time I spent editing. When it comes to the cinematography though, like I actually don't remember the division as much, just because I think it was just so collaborative in that sense. And there's like who was holding the camera, I think, is almost beside the point, to the sense that, like, when we were holding, like, whoever was holding the camera, it was kind of like, it was a result of things that we had talked about and fought over. And like, there's no question that, like, the aesthetic of the film is not something I would have made by myself, and not something Adam would have made by himself, which is kind of like why I think it's great, is that it's this thing that is the result of this hybrid, and not always an easy hybrid, but one that I think that like we earned, and we're very intentional about in that way.
Little piece of trivia for you, since you mentioned the meat market, the grocery store, the dolly shots at the meat counter, like where the kind of tracks across the meat and comes out and you see Tallie approach. The meat people lent us their meat cart, and that's what we used for the dolly. Thought that was interesting to mention.
Thanks, meat people. So that kind of leads into, I wanted to talk about the ending quickly. As I was watching the film, at no point did I actually ever think I was going to be seeing a happy ending to this film. So that was this wonderful surprise, because I felt like everything was just sort of barreling toward disaster. And so I feel like it's completely deserved and really unexpected. So I'm curious, was a happy ending always sort of in the cards? Yeah, I guess that's my question.
I'm going to say, yeah, like, I feel like there are certain things in the film that were there from like the very first outline. And that is one of them. And it's like, I would have given it up if it didn't work. But I will say that like going back, like friends of mine, especially like from film school, like I had a reputation for just like always having these really kind of like bleak endings. And I was determined on Joy Kevin that was going to have a happy ending, and it didn't have a happy. And so I was quite pleased that like that when we shot this and I put it together in the edit, that it works and it was good. And we also shot an alternate ending, which is also great, actually. And happy in its own bizarre kind of way. It's just it didn't connect to the rest of the body of the film in the way that we thought it might. But it was that's something that I hope ends up on a DVD someday, because it's cool too.
All right, so I've got a quick question for Tallie, and then I've got a question for everybody else before we close things out. I guess it's not even a question. Tallie, I just want to hear about that scene of gluttony. What was it like? I think you made.
Oh, it was so
you made
gross.
the entire staff here at Frameline at least dry heave during that moment. So I'm curious what you like filming that.
It was what was rice?
What are you talking about? It was ground beef,
there?
Tallie. Jesus.
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, it was raw meat. Yeah, it was raw meat. I got trichinosis. I got really sick. Yeah, it was true gags. And it was watching it was really traumatizing. And I don't know. I also, when I was watching it, though, I was thinking like, man, I love acting. It's so weird. It was fun. I don't know. You know, that's why you do it, right?
Do you also play the clarinet? I'm curious.
Thank you so much, Joe. Yes, that was me on my grandfather's wooden clarinet, and I relearned how to play Shenandoah, and I haven't really played it since.
Well, that scene is vital, I feel like, to the film itself. So thank you for doing that. So I guess the last question I have is, so Frameline Fangs is sort of our October, Halloween, spooky, whatever film showcase. So I'm curious if basically what sort of October film recommendations you might have for people. I feel like I'm always in a cycle of sort of finding new ones and having old favorites that end up just sort of getting recycled in October. So I'm curious what some suggestions you might have.
It's a great question.
Tallie, are you Googling? Somebody's Googling.
I'll go.
I know, you can see my, can I say two?
You could say up to 5, sure.
Wow, that's too generous.
3.
Under the Shadow is a 2016 film that's Iranian. Have you guys heard of it or seen it?
Yes.
It's so good. It's set during the War of the Cities, in the 80s, and it does that really smart thing in horror where real horror is set against like psychological horror, and it's so good. And then also I love that movie Monster House, the animated one that came out a couple years ago. It is so good. It's truly scary, but it's also a kids movie. So if you need like a break from the psychological horror that we're all living under, I would just watch Monster House. It's so good.
Next up for us is Hausu, or House, and we love that film, and it's a perfect October film. And actually, Frank Mosley, who's not on the call right now, who stars in the Carnivores, he and his partner Jocelyn Jensen and my partner Ariana and I have a date next Sunday to watch Halloween, right before Halloween. So we do it on Zoom, and we chat each other hilarious shit. It's always fun. So those are my next two up.
I'm gonna go with All the Real Girls, David Gordon Green movie, which is not the least bit scary. Like, there's nothing scary about it, but is like, to me, like, first, like, it's just like the whole thing feels like it was shot at golden hour, like it's in the fall, and it has this like profoundly ephemeral quality to it, just woven into it, that to me feels like October, November, and I can just watch it forever, and do every year. So
yeah, that Bonnie and Prince Billy soundtrack, or maybe just a couple of Will Oldham tracks in that film. I mean, nothing says autumn more than that. So I guess I'll throw out a couple for me. Last year's Frameline Fangs film, Knife and Heart by Jan Gonzalez, is a sort of queer De Palma throwback set in a gay porn studio in Paris, and it is wonderful and a big crowd pleaser. Starring Vanessa Paradis, directed by Jan Gonzalez. And my other one I would suggest is my other favorite queer horror film, Daughters of Darkness, with Delphine Seyrig, in which she plays the Countess Elizabeth Bathory, sort of reincarnated as this lesbian vampire who is coveting this couple that they meet. And that in itself, it's great. Great classic. Thank you all so much for letting us share your film. We're really excited to connect audiences to it. And thank you so much for joining us for the Q&A.
yeah.
Thanks for having us. Great to see you, Caleb. Great to see you, Adam. I just saw the movie for the first time yesterday, and it's so beautiful. So I'm really fanning out today.
Yeah, I mean,
over Caleb and Adam.
With this year, you didn't even get to like meet up because you didn't have an official premiere, did you?
No, we didn't.
South by Southwest was canceled.
Yeah, it was canceled. It's true.
Looking forward to
stay
next time we
healthy.
can be in the same room, guys. For real.
I can't wait till I'll be in the same room together again.
Yeah.
Please stay healthy.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.